Hello, I'm Mara Trumbo from Art Expression Studio in Florida. I'm also one of the online painting magazine contributing artists, and up to now I've been happy to demonstrate painting in acrylics, oils, colored pencils, but then I discovered this new technique and I invite you to join me and come and try something new. It is called Fluid Colors Pour, and basically you liquidize some of the paints and merge them together to form abstract paintings like this one. The tools required are pretty simple and can be found in your kitchen. I have used a baking dish as a drip tray, my baking cooling rack, some wax paper, plastic cups, lolly sticks, palette knife, and put everything together close by and started by covering the pan and putting the drip tray on top. I also collected some plastic cups from a gym after classes. They are being thrown out and I'd like to recycle, and the rest would be canvas or a wood panel. And as we go along, I'll describe how the flirt roll and some of the silicone did not stick to a brand new canvas. The first one is called a flip cup technique. And basically what we do is we use the float roll, which is available from Ace Hardware, a little bit at the bottom of each cup, and try and make it equal. I haven't, for the sake of this movie, is a little bit more, a little bit less. I never measure anything, just like my cooking. And then I use beautiful metallic paints by Americana, by Deco Art, and I use the deep blue and some aqua colors. And you have to mix it thoroughly and let it rest for a little bit. So this portion is going to be a little bit boring, and it's almost like a Betty Crocker mix-it recipe. So just a few drops depending on the consistency of your color. I found that also my first pour here was a little bit too thick, and I could have added some water, and try and use distilled water unless you have a Culligan system like I have with purified water coming out. You don't want any other particles in there, and you want to dilute it to the consistency really of mayonnaise is too thick like I've got now, so you have to reduce it to something like honey. When you see honey dripping off a spoon, that's what it should look like. So I'm continuing here to add the colors in, and as I said that I'm hoping to paint a sea, a dark sea, slowly becoming lighter and crashing onto the shore. And now I'm adding on 91%, I can never pronounce that word, isopropyl alcohol, and it's got to be the strong one, 91%, because the 70% has too much water in it. This allows the cells, as they call them, those little openings in the space of in between the colors that form like a lacy effect, without using the silicone, which we'll do in our second pouring. So the alcohol should have the same effect. Again, once I've put it in with a drip cane that I've got in my art studio. You can use an eyedropper, you can use an old eye drops bottle. There's lots of things around the house that you can use without rushing out to buy all these art supplies. The palette knives you see there, I've just got in a lovely pack of for my art studio from Amazon, and I've taken the two biggest ones out. And because part of the technique is almost like icing a cake, and those two would be ideal for that effect. So here I'm pouring into a bigger cup, and I'm sorry it's off camera, a little bit of each of the colors, and I'm doing it in layers, so you can either drip it in the middle or you can twirl it around. It'll give you different effects, and instead of doing it all at once, you do it in 2 or 3 layers. So once you've got most of it in, and it's always advisable to leave a little bit out, and you'll see why in a little while, to do touch-ups. You grab your canvas, turn it upside down, and rest it back on the baking rack. Whoops, that fell off. I thought of holding it together with some clips, which I'll do next time. So let that start activating together. I've also got a milkshake straw, which I intend blowing just like I do on some of my oil paintings. And when you lift the cup, you see the colors running and you encourage them to form the shape of a wave by tilting your canvas all around. And you also want the edges, of course, covered. So you let it drip slowly. And now I wish I had got some watercolor paper in my drip tray, because I could have picked up the rest and done a beautiful painting out of what was dripping underneath. Now this is already a nice shape, but I wanted to experiment, so I started moving some of it around with a straw. And then I was going to touch up the sides with my fingers or the palette knife, and I went to wash my hands in the meantime because I really got mucky with it. And so I'm going to just touch it up, and then decided no, there's enough left over in the cups that I can fill all the little spaces and even add a few more little highlights on the blue there, and add some of the darker colors on the corners here. That's a metallic blue black that I've put in those corners, and this was like a honey white. And you actually want to skim on the surface. You do not want to plow through your layers of paint, and encourage it to flow at the sides. Now once it starts forming what they call cells, it separates. And what I have found is these were brand new little pack of canvases. They were not the old-fashioned duck type pure cotton. They are poly cotton, and the polyester being nylon, of course, it's very smooth and it doesn't let the paint adhere to it as much as it would have if it was cotton, or if I had base coated it with perhaps some gesso to make it a little bit rough surface. So this gave me an idea that next time I'm going to use some of my second-hand rejected canvases that sometimes I use for workshops and I'm not happy with, and they end up in my workshop. So those will be the ideal surface to use to encourage the paint to adhere to it a little bit better. So here with the straw, I'm trying to blow some different shapes there to see if I can move the white to form little cloudy formations or the foam of the waves. And you can manipulate it to actually form different shapes if you've got a design in mind, or just let the canvas do the walking and the talking. So this is what the final one is beginning to look like. Two dots there that are dripped while I was pouring extra paint on are going to get smoothed over. And I wish I had left that alone because I actually quite liked it, but we'll see what this does. Now don't forget, this paint technique forms a chemical reaction that allows it to activate. You are beginning to see the cells forming there that are coming up. So at this stage, the less I touched it, the better it would have been. But you know me, always experimenting. So we'll see what the final piece looks like. There's also two little pieces where the bubbles have burst and there's no paint there at all, so I'll have to touch those up. There we go. It takes about 24 hours. So the next day, I got up very early to have a look, and this is what the final result was like, and I'm quite pleased. It's nice and shiny, but I might still give it a coat of gloss paint when it's totally dry. So what to do with the leftovers? Well, I'm trying the silicone bit. Silicone, a lot of people use WD-40, and I bought the little bottle that you pour instead. So goodness, if there's an explosion in my kitchen, you know what's happening, because I'm now mixing alcohol with the silicone. And I was also going to use the flamethrower, you know, the one you use for creme brulee. And I decided with so much alcohol and so much oil, I better not. I'd hate to set the house alight. So here's the second pour of all the leftover paint mixed with silicone this time. And I already like the colors that it's forming. I've actually added a little bit more metallic gold in this one, since I had to top up the cups. And I don't have enough paint now left over in the cups, so I'm picking it up from the tray. And I'm normally quite thrifty with the use of my paint, so I'll use every little bit left over. I've also got some purple in this one and some of the blue left over from the previous one. Now with the oil, you can see what is happening. It's separating, it's refusing to go around the corners and down the sides as I ordered it to. and that's because the canvas is so smooth. So learn by my mistakes and go reinventing the wheel and wasting a few of your own canvases. Use less silicone so that it doesn't slide off, and also use a rough canvas. Actually, wood would have even been better, and I wouldn't seal the wood. I would let the paint grab it and absorb it a little bit, because that will probably be even better. There's a lot of surfaces you can use. I've seen on YouTube some of the artists use old records, you know, the long playing records, and it's come out beautiful, beautiful effects. You can even make a clock out of it afterwards. So here I'm trying to touch it up, and let me tell you that this lasted for hours. I've speeded up to film now, and I didn't film half of it, but I was getting really impatient with it. First I did it with a spatula, and then I used the lollipop sticks. And then eventually I went into my studio and I used one of my sable brushes, and I remembered to wash it, thank goodness, or I would have ruined that one. But the more I covered it, the more it uncovered itself. And there it is. It's already sliding off there and dripping into the tray. But eventually I won my battle. I got up early in the morning to look at the other piece I had done, and found some bare spots, and by this time the paint had sort of solidified more or less. It had thickened anyway, it wasn't totally dry, so I scraped it off the tray and I put it on with a brush, and I said a little prayer and it stuck. This technique is so much fun, and I'm having a really good time trying, and eventually I'd like to do more and more videos to help others who are new to this and who think it's a very difficult technique because they see the experts do it with such ease. But let me tell you, you don't know how many other canvases they threw away in the process before they filmed themselves doing that one good piece. I like to show my mistakes so that you learn by them. And here is some of the close-ups of what the cells look like and how the colors separate from each other and form those tiny little bubbles that look like gemstones. I absolutely love it. I will try and make it a little bit more liquidy next time, so when the white breaks up into cells, it looks like a lace pattern. But the world is your oyster here. You choose your favorite colors, you choose your own material, and let me tell you, a lot of them are available at the dollar store, at Michael's, and at Walmart, especially those little wooden frames. They come out fantastic. So here's a new little technique for you to play with, and you can also do some recipes that are non-toxic for your grandchildren and for summer schools, done with Elmer's glue to replace some of the liquids. And of course, they're not permanent. The colors may fade, the paint may crack, but they're fun and safe for children to play with during summer holidays. So when this one dried, I was wowed at the beautiful result. Here it is. I think it's worthy putting a hook and hanging it up on my studio wall, and lots more fun ahead, and I'll be sharing it with you. So join me again. This is Mara Trumbo signing out.